All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the MotorBiscuit Minute, the only show with the word minute in the title that is longer than a minute. My name is Braden Carlson, and we're back with Joe Santos and Dan Mayfield. And today we're doing things a little bit differently. We're going to shake up a minivan tier list here and see if we can ultimately decide what the best minivan is, or maybe there's multiple. But as you can see on the screen, hopefully, we've got the tier list here. S being the best and D being the worst. It's kind of like a grading system, A through F, but it's S through D. So everything we don't like is going to go towards the bottom. Everything we do like is going to go towards the top. Dan has graciously created this slideshow so we can one by one go through each one of the vans, look at the key talking points, and we're going to ultimately try and decide what tier they belong in. So, how you doing today, guys?
Good.
I'm ready
You
to
guys
talk
ready to
minivans.
Yeah, the most exciting thing you could do in the automotive industry. But so I guess we'll just kick it off. We're going with slide number one, the Toyota Sienna. And you'll have to forgive me as I try and sort through my little photos here. Because oh boy.
Well, I think the Sienna rocks for one reason, and that is Toyota's super clever all-wheel drive. And it's a hybrid that all these have, but it's a front-wheel drive minivan. They just put an electric motor in the back. And it's the same thing with the Highlander has it, the RAV4 has it. What else, Joe? Help me out here. I think that might be it.
That might be it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Venison.
It takes up a little bit of room in the back because the battery sits over the cargo area. But it's really rad because there's no connection between no physical connection between the engine and the rear wheel. So you don't need all the complicated transmission stuff. You don't need all the complicated transaxles and all the other weird stuff you may want in there. No extra drive shaft. And with that, the Sienna just rocks because it's a front wheel drive van 90% of the time. And then when the computers sense some slip, it just sends the power to the rear wheels, and you have all-wheel drive instantly with instant torque. And it's 189 horsepower, which is not that much, and that's a combined figure, but that's plenty to get this van going.
Yeah, especially when you got a little electric power backing you up. I'm sure it's plenty zesty. It's as zesty as you need a minivan to be.
Right.
It's kind of like a Haldex system in that it sends a slip and it powers the wheels, but again, no coupler in the middle or center diff or any of that stuff to worry about destroying. So I don't
Yep.
know, that immediately just having, for one, Toyota reliability and all-wheel drive makes me want to put it pretty high up there.
Yeah.
But I don't want to get too crazy too early. Of course,
Right.
we can always move
The
things around.
Yeah. I mean,
the
I think we're gonna put it pretty high up on S or A right now and just kind of adjust accordingly. I mean, for
Yep.
me, just kind of playing off what you guys are talking about. I mean, gas mileage is a huge thing. Because as we see, probably with the rest of these vans, I mean, with the Sienna, the new Sienna anyway, being rated at 36 and 36, that's amazing. So, especially for a minivan. And I've tested in the real world and I've gotten, well above 30 with combined driving, even at a really high altitude here. So it's awesome in that regard too.
Yeah, that's an insane fuel economy rating for a minivan. Makes the trips to Disneyland a lot cheaper.
Or across.
well,
Soccer practice every week on one tank of gas for a month. All right, well, I'm gonna say we put it in A, and then if we decide that it needs to get bumped up based on the competition, we roll with it.
I like
So
that.
A she goes. Is everybody good with that? You guys can see that, correct?
Yeah.
Right.
All right, the Kia Carnival. I'll start out by saying that Kia interiors lately go kind of hard. Like the um Telluride interior is crazy. And based on this picture you've put in here, Dan, with the reclining leather captain's chairs, I'm gonna
That's
say they.
only That's
Oh, go
only
ahead.
available on the SX and SX Prestige trims, unfortunately, which are almost $50,000 vans.
Oh,
But I know for a Kia minivan, right? But it's a baller. It's a baller of a van, and those reclining seats are heated, ventilated, massaging, and they have their own radio controls in the back. And this has the talkback feature. So if you're the driver, you can talk to an intercom to the people in the way back, which is pretty rad.
it's like
And
a
then it also
limo.
has a 360-degree camera inside. So
Oh,
you can, which is rad. So if you just hit the button on the screen, you can see what everybody's doing inside the van in the back 5 seats.
wow.
Yeah.
Ultimate
Mhm.
children spying.
Yeah, no doubt. Quit hitting your sister, Braden. Quit hitting your sister.
Yeah, I don't think that the price point is that. I mean, even if you're at full tilt at 50 grand or whatever, that's actually not bad considering, if you're a family and you're going to spend that much money on, say, like a three-row SUV that doesn't
Right.
have as much room, doesn't have all of the same kind of feature set like that. I mean, that's worth it. I think that's worth it.
Absolutely. And I think that too, like the Palisade, the Telluride, they seat 7. Similarly, this can seat 8. They seat 7. This has way more cargo room. It's 145 cubic feet. Like a Telluride's less than 100. I think it's like 95 cubic feet, but with all the seats folded. And the cool thing about these two in lesser trims, if you get the bench seat, it bolts out. You can just take it right out, which is pretty cool. And you have a flat load floor in the middle of it, which is really kind of awesome.
Dan, if all else fails, you can sell Kias.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, the Kia does have the 10-year, 100,000 mile powertrain warranty, which is pretty gnarly. That's
no all-wheel drive though.
Right. So I don't
It
know.
is.
Well, first of all, I have to address that I've already messed up and I didn't put a picture of a Kia Carnival in here. So we're just gonna have to imagine it wherever we put it. But yeah, I don't know. That's a tough call. The upper price gets a little crazy, but I mean, for overall for the warranty and the available options in the cargo space, I mean, it
And
could last.
109 more horsepower than the Toyota.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. But it's a V6 though, so it's probably got substantially less fuel economy as well. I would
Yes.
almost in this day and age give it a ding for having a V6.
Yeah, there's no excuse anymore.
If you're taking the family cross country and gas is $5 a gallon, you're gonna not want that 21 mile per gallon rating.
I will vote somewhere above the Toyota, but not the top spot.
I would say
So
80. Put it in the 80 column.
okay, so we don't have it, so we'll just have
Yeah.
to imagine it. But yeah, does
Well,
that
that's
mean we're putting it on par with the Toyota? Or are we bumping the Toyota down?
Let's put it with the Toyota. That
All
would be
right.
my guess.
All right, Honda Odyssey, the classic. If you ask people to imagine or tell you a minivan and they don't say like a Grand Caravan because that one's easy, they're probably going to say Honda Odyssey.
Yeah.
And I was with moonroof and power seats, but one of the options is also a built-in vacuum, which is like the ultimate family car thing. So the high regard, in my opinion, for that. But again, the V6, I don't know what these have anymore. They still have J series V6s, or is Honda past that?
Yeah, they're J series V6s.
So not great on fuel economy either.
Not super
And
great now. And then as
they
far as this one's got the Honda vac, it's got the cabin talk, it has the camera as well. It even has, I think, second row, you can slide them around to kind of adjust them in like fore and aft and side to side, which is kind of cool. So if you're the driver, you need to reach your kid in the second row or something like that, you can do that. So a lot of cool features for this one.
The back seats fold flat too, don't they, Joe?
Yeah.
Like completely flat, like into the floor.
oh yeah, it goes really deep. There is a lot of cargoes, 155 cubic feet. That's pretty nuts.
Yeah, that's actually more than a full-size Tahoe with all of the seats down.
That's crazy. We're just gonna wind up putting them all in A tier.
All in A.
I almost
They're
all awesome.
just for the heritage and the cargo space and the vacuum being like the ultimate family thing. I would almost say this is our first S tier van, but what do
I
you guys
know.
think?
Yeah.
It's close.
Where it doesn't stand up, in my opinion, is the styling. I think that the Sienna looks right. It looks much better. I think the MPV, the Kia Carnival, looks better. The Odyssey just looks like, my dry cleaner has one, and every time I see him driving around, there's just a bunch of shirts and jackets and stuff hanging in the back. And it's just like, to me, I just think of like the Odyssey as being that cargo minivan kind of thing, and it doesn't really strike me as something fun or interesting. The Sienna has that big wide mouth grill now. The MPV Carnival has that SUV front end. I would put the Odyssey in the B for styling and kind of dopiness alone. Also, V6, not good horsepower.
I think you have me sold on that actually. What do you think, Joe?
What are we saying? A or B? What is it?
B.
B.
Ooh,
I wish there was a way you could be between them.
I know. Let's put it for B for now.
Okay.
Because I agree with the powertrain, and I do agree with the styling, which I know there's a new Odyssey coming up. So hopefully.
Chrysler Pacifica.
I almost made 2 slides for this, and you guys can tell me if I was wrong to make one. They sell it as 2 different versions, gas-powered version and the hybrid version. The gas-powered 37, the 46 is kind of spendy, 46.9. It's the base for the hybrid.
Yeah.
It does pack a punch for a hybrid with 260 horse. Seats 7 or 8. Not as roomy as the others. 140 feet in the regular, but then the hybrid, the Chryslers for years have had the cool stow and go seats that just go right into the floor, right?
Yeah.
That's been one of the great things about them. You just drop the seats, you load it up with all the stuff from Costco, and you go. And that's been one of the coolest things about the regular Pacifica. The hybrid, that's where the batteries are. So there's no way to stuff the seats in the floor. And so you lose all of that. So I don't know if I should have made 2 different slides for this. They're the same van, but not really the same van. In my opinion, looking at our tier list here, Braden, I would put the regular Pacifica like on a B, and then the hybrid, because it's expensive and it loses all of its basically cool capability of the seats, I put it like in the D.
See, I was gonna vote C, so that's kind of right in the middle there. What do you think, Joe?
I was gonna vote B across the board, mainly because I like the whole hybrid thing. And correct me, as the hybrid a plug-in? Isn't it a plug-in?
Yes, it is. It is a plug-in hybrid. It's a PHEV.
Okay.
Yeah, which does add a lot. It's only got 16 miles of EV only. That's enough for a lot of people, though.
Right.
Yeah, it helps. Okay.
Yeah, but you're right. That is a huge benefit, and it's nice to be able to just cruise around on EV.
So how about
I'll go for B, but
and we'll go with B and just kind of keep the hybrid thing in the back of the mind moving forward, just in case something needs to get moved around.
Is it all-wheel drive as well?
Oh, I forget.
I would imagine the plug-in would be.
I actually have
that picture is
what this is kind of nuts. I actually have the skip backs up here in another window. In regular V6 trim, it gets 19 in the city.
That's not great, but I mean, I guess to be expected with almost 300 horsepower V6.
Right.
But all right.
And it's 30 miles of total plug-in range.
That's pretty good, actually.
Which is not half bad. Yeah, I think the older ones were 16. This one's 30. And the hybrid gets 28 in town.
On to the VW Microbus, or the Volkswagen Bus, as many people know it. Iconic, air-cooled. People have been touring in rock bands in these things and going to Woodstock in them for 50 years. And I've seen plenty that are super ratty and you would think shouldn't be on the road, and they're still just kicking along, getting daily driven, rust holes the size of basketballs on the side of them, just cruising up the old Pacific Coast Highway. So I mean, for me, obvious S tier. Let's just look at it. Look what it is.
As somebody who grew up in one and toured in one as a kid and learned to drive in one, That was my first, literally behind the wheel experience was in a Volkswagen bus. They are awesome, but they are slow. They are so slow. That
And
60
the
horsepower.
heaters don't exist.
No, you can get them with air conditioning, but that's hopeful. I mean, that's
Right.
they were available with air conditioning. The heaters are a vent. It's about this tall and about that wide, and it's between the front seats on the floor.
Yep.
It's just a duct. There's really no
Straight from
heater
the
to
engine.
speak of.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, when
you're
I was a
literally
kid,
using only engine heat to heat the cabin. It works good if you're pretty high in the RPM. I have a buddy that's got a Beetle, which is the same system in a lot smaller space, and it didn't do too great for us in the winter.
the when I was a kid, my sister and I, the engine's in the back, and there's a flat shelf in the back. So when I was a kid, my sister and I would climb up and we would sit on that shelf in the back just to stay warm in the
Yep.
winter. It's the warmest place in the bus.
Yeah, I mean,
But a giant sliding door that's really awesome that you can just like put everything in. They seat 1 million people because there's no seat belts in the back.
right, right.
Um, and then if you get the camper van one, you get the mini fridge, the propane stove, the pop top camper. You can sleep up there. They're amazing. But don't ask them to go much more than 65 on the highway and not blow up. A lot of people, sure, we were talking earlier, Braden, about friends that have Subaru conversions, and
Yeah.
the 1.8 liter or 2 liter conversions was very popular. You could buy some Belordo downdraft carbs for them and hot rod them. But if you're not a gearhead, I would say stay away from one of these things. If you don't like working on them, stay away from them.
A
But
lot
they
of
are a lot of fun.
because the transaxle is so similar, a lot of people do the Porsche air cooled 6 cylinders in them as well, which is pretty sweet. But I feel like we have to make clear here that we're looking at this objectively. We can't really compare it by modern standards. It's just like, tier list for minivans is overall practicality and most importantly, coolness, because everybody knows there's not much cooler than a minivan. So, um, I'm gonna say I'll agree with you on the speed being a deterrent, and I kind of forgot about the heat thing. So I would put it in A, but let's let Joe speak his piece on this one.
You put it in A?
Yeah. I just because the
Wow.
the
Wow.
coolness factor of it is hard to get
Wow.
over, and it's like the iconic. I don't know. It's the detriments are there, but that's just kind of that's part of the package. You don't need to get where
Oh,
you're going fast. You're enjoying yourself in your VW Boss.
I mean, I'm leaning more towards C or D, mainly because I mean I'm obviously not the microbus enthusiast like you guys, but again, looking at objectively, if I were to buy or choose a minivan from a practicality standpoint, the microbus, as cool as it is, which I do agree, it's all it looks like a Twinkie on wheels. It's cool, but yeah, I mean it's not the best feeling.
I would hate to drive one, and because of what they cost, I would never buy one. Like if I was going to buy a minivan that I was going to use every single day, there's no shot it would be one of these. But so I guess that is something that I need to drag into consideration. Where would you put it, Dan?
Yeah,
vinyl seats that get hot in the summer, cold in the winter are awful.
Yep.
Every time you're driving at every stoplight, your foot is to the floor and you're not keeping up with traffic. It is awful. If you load them down with anything, it's terrible. And Joe, you live in Denver. I live in Albuquerque. We are at altitude. These things make like 50 horsepower at altitude. It's terrible. They are slow. Um, the if you're ever worried about any kind of safety, anything, don't buy a bus. They are
Yeah,
you
that's
you
true.
sit in front of the front axle. There is
Yep.
no cross. You rear end anybody, you're dead. Your legs are cropped off. You're done.
It's a tuna
Um,
can on wheels,
yes.
basically.
Anybody hits you from the rear, you're going right through the windshield, probably into the non-compressible steering column. Um, and there's no adjustment at all of like the seats. Like basically, you just kind of like unbolt it and move it. There's no real
Right.
adjustment of the seats, right? Um, the steering wheel does not move. They're loud.
Yeah.
They're terrible. They're terrible. They're just cool. and
All right,
practical.
you're right. I'm
They're
letting the cool
terrible.
factor get in. All right, so where would you put it?
I would put it as a C because I can think of worse vans,
Okay.
but I
That's
would put
that's
it
two
as a
votes
C.
for C then. So I'll concede. We'll let the democracy rule. The VW bus. Get ready for the comments though, guys.
Right.
I tried to
Yeah, bring it.
salvage it.
Bring it. As a guy who's worked
The
on them and
Bus
been around them
Pilots
for years.
Association is on the way. 1984 Chrysler Grand Caravan. This is one of my favorite things ever because not only could you get one of these with a manual transmission, but you could get them turbocharged from the factory. And they have ECUs with I believe they use the same 24 pin that Honda ECUs use. So you can plug an ostrich into them. You can solder up these ECUs and then tune them. So you have a turbo manual minivan and you bump the boost up a little bit and give it a good tune. And I can't imagine a lot of things more exciting in the world of minivans than that. The styling is not aged gracefully. I'll give you that. But that's one of the things that's almost enticing about it, especially with the concept of it being boosted, is like the goofiness of it as you go by, Johnny and his D16 Civic is just it's worth its weight in gold, in my opinion.
Well, was it the Honda that had the mid-engine turbo manual minivan for a while too?
The Toyota Previa, which we'll get
Was
to
the
for a while,
Previa? That's what
they
I'm
were
thinking
mid-engine.
of.
They
Yeah.
had a supercharged engine option, but
Yes.
I don't know that you could ever get it supercharged and manual. If I recall,
Okay.
that was not an option.
Well, I think even though you can put a blower and a manual and everything on the Chrysler Caravan, I really have a hard time believing it's going to be fast in any way. It may be ridiculous fun, but I have a feeling that as much engine work and tuning as you could do, at its core, it was 101 horsepower carbureted thing. You're never going to get that thing more than 170, 180 horsepower. Out the door, you can buy what was the Pacifica was 280 horsepower out the door.
Yeah.
30 grand. Like, come on.
Well,
But
if I recall correctly, I've seen that people have tuned them into the 200s. 'Cause the turbo one is a little bit spicier than the 101 horsepower, but you also have to think about the fact that there's no safety stuff on this like this motor. This thing should be way, way lighter, and it's gonna make a lot, like, even if you're not dragging Hellcats and stuff like that, you're manually rowing gears in a minivan, and you got a blow off valve turbo flutter, just the goofiest, most exciting thing, and you could fit all of your friends in it.
they're kind of fun that way. Everything else about them is terrible.
I agree. Yeah, it's like a PT Cruiser GT. It's entertaining because it's awful, but because it's a turbo engine and manual transmission, it's a good time.
Yes.
So objectively, from the minivan overall standpoint, I understand that it's
if you're actually out there trying to buy a minivan, and we want to recommend you buy a minivan, don't buy a Chrysler Caravan or
yeah.
What was the town and country was one I was trying to think of with the wood trim.
Yeah,
which was awesome.
I believe the Voyager, the Plymouth Voyager was
Plymouth
also
Voyager.
the same thing with the wood trim. You might have even been able to get the wood trim on the original Caravan too, for all I know.
Right.
But,
torsion beam rear suspensions.
Any input, Joe?
Oh, my friend in high school actually had one of these. It was gold. So there's a little soft spot in my heart for one of these, but it is a terrible van. Plenty of room, super slow. I don't know. I mean, to me, overall, I'd still put it at the bottom of the list.
I was gonna say C.
D. I'm voting D all the way.
So, what's your
minivans
vote, Joe?
have moved
I'd say
on.
D.
All right, D it is.
It's about as fast as a V-dub, but there's no cool factor in it. There's a little bit of nostalgia. Give it another 20 years. 20 years and they'll be cool.
the turbo manual ones are excessively rare, and they carry their own cool factor because of what they are. But objectively, overall, the thing just kind of sucks.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder how quick or fast they actually feel. You know what I mean?
I'm definitely going to have to look that up afterwards because
Yeah.
I swear I've seen some people like put them into like the low 200s at the wheels, which would be hilarious. I wonder how well those transmissions hold up. But we're burning time here. The
Okay,
1996
I had
Mazda
to
MPV. So I actually the
real,
MPV I have a more modern picture of it, but go ahead.
real quick, the Caravan with a 2.6 liter automatic, 0 to 60, 14.5 seconds.
Wow.
That's
That is
like
moving.
city bus. Yeah, that's pretty terrible.
Nice.
I have a soft spot for these MPVs. Both of those back doors are sliding doors,
Yeah.
and they're so awesome for that reason alone. That's the only reason I did. I did not realize though that 25 years ago, 26 years ago, these were $22,000 vehicles in 1996.
Wow.
That's crazy though that they were all-wheel drive even back then. Like,
It's crazy.
and the styling looks a lot more like you think about the fact that the Caravan ran into the early 90s, I believe, and then the next gen is like the ultimate Grand Caravan shape. So like the MPV is almost a refreshing, more SUV oriented thing. It's fairly comparable to like, you know, like a Honda Pilot of the same era or something like that. It's a little more shapely. It doesn't exactly scream soccer mom. So the fact that that combined with all-wheel drive and 220 horsepower in 1996 is it's putting it up there for me.
It was a big Ford V6 that they put in them back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
The big six you could get in the Ford Ranger, you could get that in the MPV.
Oh wait, was it the Vulcan V6? That's gonna if it's that engine, it's gonna take some points away because those engines are
I
garbage.
don't think it was. I don't think it was back in the day. I looked it up and I forget which Ford it was, but it was not that one.
I can't remember because I think it might have been more towards 2000 when they implemented that, but the Mazda B2300 or whatever, 2003, I don't know, but the Ford Ranger that came with a V6 that was just relentlessly bad.
They were a friend of mine in high school had one of these. His mom had one of these. We would all pile in and go to concerts and stuff in it. It was great. It seemed to just swallow up people, and it was great fun at the time. We could pit. I don't know how many people we had in the thing. I think we had like 10 people in there, and I mean we were scrawny high school kids at the time, but they were great.
So where are we
Well, I don't know if we're just kind of using this picture, if we're representing the 96 MPV specifically, I'm saying it goes towards the top.
Yeah.
Just the features
Yeah.
for the time, and again, looking at it from like the VW bus standpoint, if you were shopping for a van currently, this wouldn't be the first place you'd go. But I wouldn't necessarily say it'd be the last. I would definitely take it over carbureted 2.2 Grand Caravan or Caravan.
The cool thing about these that I noticed, Kelly Blue Book has their list price estimates. Top tier, great condition. One of these guys, $4,000. List price estimate $2,700 to $4,000, and that's a lot of vehicle with a lot of power, with a lot of features, everything you would ever want for $4,000. That's a ton of stuff, and it's all-wheel drive.
But being 25 years old, it's probably also a lot of miles and a lot of incoming maintenance.
Right. But if you got to buy, if you got to buy some cheap wheels and you're looking for a minivan, this may be one of those great kind of hidden gems that you might be able to find in your local Craigslist.
I agree.
I don't know. I'm still putting it at C in my mind.
It's at
I was
least
gonna say
a
C.
C. Yeah, it's not a good minivan by any stretch by today's standards, but I think considering everything it did for its time, it belongs in the C.
All right, C it is. Oh,
And I think that's the last slide that I made. That you had some
Oh,
other
okay.
bands on. You got the Ford Aerostar on there.
I do the Ford Aerostar. Well, let's start with that. How about that?
Terrible, awful,
I
nothing at
agree.
all. Like that's what's below D.
I don't. I don't know. We could add a column if we really felt like it, but I
let's
would.
put it at
Just
D now.
just put it at
I
D, and we'll
I tend
forget
to
about
agree.
the Aerostar.
Uh,
Even Ford wants to forget about the Aerostar.
I
yeah,
agree.
that's actually the band that I grew up with. My
Oh,
wasn't the best at picking cars. Bought one of those. It was the Eddie Bauer edition.
Oh,
It
nice.
was brown and it had little trees in the seats.
Well,
I
let's.
think within the course of, I would say, if I had to estimate a couple, maybe a few years, I mean, it started making some weird noises. You know, the window motors failed, AC failed. It was, yeah, it failed. It was bad.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, let's bump it forward a few years then to the Ford Windstar right here. Also not good, but I have a bit of a soft spot for it because it was the first thing that ever took me and a bunch of my friends to Las Vegas. So we all piled in there and trip to Vegas. First time I'd ever gone there other than just passing through. So bit of a soft spot. This was the Sport, so I had the awesome wing that I'm sure did crazy good for it in the corners. But yeah, I'm gonna say maybe C, but I wouldn't be hurt if you guys wanted to put it that in D as well.
I'll give it a C minus.
All right.
So is that a D? All right, fine. Let's put it in C.
All right. So, what do we got? The Dodge current Grand Caravan, which I mean, I feel like
Can we actually buy that? Because that's the thing. I was under the impression that those were fleet only.
yeah, I don't know if that is I don't know actually if that's a thing.
I'm pretty sure the current Dodge Caravan is fleet only, and you have to be, government employee to get one.
Yeah,
Wow.
because I think otherwise it's discontinued, right?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, for that alone, I'd say it goes to the bottom.
Well, if you want one used, though, they're really not terrible. They are similar to the Pacifica. Everything about them is Pacifica. They have the stow and go. If you get lucky and find one like a 2017 or 18 used, when did they update those, Joe? 18, 17, something like that?
Yeah, I think it was somewhere around there, 18 or 17.
And, they're really not a terrible thing, but the reliability scores on those are pretty bad. It's like if they put a Chrysler badge on it, they just like decided they were going to not tighten all the bolts. It seems like they built the Pacificas on like a Monday and they built these on a Thursday or something.
Yeah, okay. So how about this then? The Pacifica is B. We'll take the points away for being fleet only or being bare bones buying a used fleet one and put it in C.
Okay.
Fair enough. Yeah,
All
and
right.
real quick, Dan, to your point, my last stint as Auto Jones, we actually had a Dodge Grand Caravan as a long-term loan, so that was basically a year. And by the end of the year, even the shifter was squeaking. Like when you would shift from park to drive, it made this weird noise. Like, how does that work? That was plastic. Anyway.
All right, this one right here is one that I have a special love/hatred for, the Nissan Quest that immediately loses points in my mind for having a VQ35. As a person who drifts an Infiniti G35 and has to hear a VQ constantly, I don't think I could do it in hauling a family around.
Well, I think the worst part about that, I think, is a VQ with a CVT.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, the VQ is a
yeah,
great
I just
resilient engine, but they're not good on gas. They don't sound good. And they just they have a couple little problematic with the oil gallery gaskets like to leak, and they're easy to overheat. Trust me, I know. My third drift event, I had to buy a new engine for my drift car. So I've been up and down that path, and I just could never recommend anyone buying a Nissan Quest if I'm honest. It hurts me because I love Nissan, but I want it in D. I don't know how you guys feel.
The Quest always seemed to me like like Nissan just happened to be forced to build a minivan at the time.
Right.
and they just like, okay, what can we do? And they were like, okay, we got an Altima, make it tall. And
Yeah.
that was all they did. And it's, it didn't work in any way. And I've never driven one. I can't even remember being in one. But I've never thought highly of the Quest.
So, D good with you guys then?
He's good with me.
All right. We're gonna get into. I know this is a little bit exotic to have on the list because it is a mid-engine sports car, but the Toyota Previa. So they are great. The shape of them is just funky enough that you have to appreciate it. It's just a giant egg, and the engine's in the middle, and you get in with a manual transmission. I've driven manual ones. The sloppiest, least inspiring shifter I have ever felt in my life. But you know what it did? It got me to the parts store and back, and that's really all I needed. So I in my head, the Previa goes up pretty high, especially like we talked about earlier. There's a supercharged option. I don't think they ever came to the US, and I don't think you could get a manual with the supercharged one. But the fact that you have a supercharged mid-engine van is just, it's exciting.
That doesn't mean it was fast.
No,
it just means it had a supercharger.
it had a little bit of extra torque at the bottom, but
Yeah,
you did get to hear it whine. It's like
yeah,
a K car with a supercharger. It still makes 94 horsepower and does 0 to 60 in 4 days, but at least you get the when you're accelerating. That's the exciting part.
right. If I'm looking for a van, I am not thinking, wow, supercharger sound.
If I'm looking for a van, though, as a person who doesn't have a family to tote around, if I'm looking for a van, I do think Previa, just because. Oh, rear wheel drive too. So
yeah, they are a cool, funky, interesting van that I think it was their way of trying to differentiate themselves from all the front engine, front wheel drive, kind of boring vans, honestly. I mean, they really were not interesting for a long time. And had it been a front engine, front wheel drive van, it might have succeeded.
Yeah, and I think that the mid-engine part, in my opinion, just sounds cool in theory, but I used to work at an oil change place once upon a time and had to change the oil on one of those things. It was worse. You have to, I don't know if you have to unbolt the driver's seat, but you have to move it just to get to the oil filter.
Yeah, it's working on it would definitely be a pain. It being a Toyota helps you in that front a little bit, but yeah, when something goes wrong, it would be kind of a nightmare. But I'm not willing to put it at the bottom of the list.
All right, well, I vote C. I vote C.
I will give it a C as well.
All right. C it is. It's just funny that we opened up with this trying to be like minivans are actually cool. Like car people like minivans, and they're all at the bottom of the list. So
we can adjust.
Speaking of K cars, the Mitsubishi Delica, which is I believe 660cc engine, right? And they were either turbo or supercharged, but a lot of people, a lot of them were off-road ready from the factory to some extent, and people just take that to the next level. You see them with like snorkels and they're all-wheel drive and they're little turbo. They weigh nothing, so they probably do fantastic off-road. And one thing in my head that makes it deserve to go pretty high up on the list is that the government doesn't like it. And I believe the state of Maine has banned people from importing them, even if they are 25 years old, and pulled the registration on a bunch of them. So just the rebellious side of me goes, wow, that's awesome. I need it.
Have you ever, I think, Joe, you've driven some JDM cars, right?
Some, but not that.
They're pretty terrible in US streets. When you try to make a left turn at a stoplight, it's horrible. You try to go to
unprotected left. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I got a couple buddies. I've had some right-hand drive cars I've spent the time behind the wheel of, but I mean, mail carriers do it. It's doable.
Yeah.
So I just feel like it's punishing yourself for no reason.
For the sake of having a cool car that you couldn't have here anyway. But there is a little bit of an elephant in this discussion too, is really that the Delica is not a minivan.
It's a minivan.
Yeah, exactly. It's a pocket van, if you will.
Do they seat 5 or 7?
I would say probably 3 if you're really comfortable being super close to people.
So 5,
I
like a five.
believe so. Yeah.
So that removes all the minivan stuff. Mitsubishi though did build I think they just called it van. It was a weird mid-engined um, minivan, and it was like, for those that remember the Transformers, there were a bunch of Transformers that looked like the Mitsubishi minivan, and they only sold them here for a few years, and they were always white with a sliding door, and they were mid-engine and kind of weird.
Was it Mitsubishi or are you thinking of the Toyota one?
No, I am looking at it here. It
Okay.
is Mitsubishi, and yeah, they're pretty 80s looking.
Is it
And
mid-engine?
uh-huh. It's
Okay,
got the
so
it's got the engine like between the two front seats.
right, yeah. So so it's a big Delica. So we
It's a
basically
big
got
Delica.
a big Delica because I confirmed here that it is front mid-engine, and they've
Mm-hmm.
been in production since 1986. And if I'm reading
Mm-hmm.
this correctly, that means they're still around to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way, right? Yeah,
Right?
1994 to present. They've had the same generation for 28 years. That's pretty crazy. Wow. I mean, that's not according to the tier list, but that's an A for longevity. Honestly, that's impressive. To have a model withstand the tale of time since 1968, that's not like a muscle car or a sports car, but just a van. I have to
Mm-hmm.
give them props. But on the grand scheme of it being useful as a minivan, I'm going to say, as cool as they are and as fun as it would be to whip run around, it's going to have to go in the D tier in my head.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
They're
All
fun,
right.
interesting. They bring a crowd at Cars and Coffee. But if you're actually trying to drive one, it'd be terrible.
So
So
that
did
begs
we
the question, do we move anything to S tier, or are we happy with where everything's at? The Kia Carnival is in B, we have to remember, or in A, I mean, but we just don't have a picture of it.
Oh yeah.
I think that, after looking at some of the stories I've written lately about Highlanders and Siennas and things like that, like everything seems to point to buying a Sienna
Oh
over
yeah,
and it's like, why bother? Why bother getting an SUV when you get all of the same capability in the van and more? And so it seems to me like the Sienna should be bumped up one more tier because of the rad hybrid and all-wheel drive, and it's big, it's nice, it's got all
I
this stuff.
agree.
All this stuff.
Especially with the 30-mile electric only range on a plug-in hybrid, that big is nuts.
Yeah.
There
And
was one more van I didn't have a picture of, and I didn't really want to put it on the list because it's a little bit of an odd one out, but I did want to bring it up while we're here. The Mercedes R63 AMG. You couldn't buy one if you wanted because there's like 4 in the world. There's more than that, but hyperbole. But it is a supercharged or twin turbo V8, I believe. It might be supercharged, I can't remember. It's a V8 rear wheel drive minivan. It doesn't have minivan doors, so I was like, this doesn't really count. It's just vaguely minivan shaped, but I just wanted to give a shout out to the R63 AMG while we're here.
I get a chance from me.
The R63?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's luxurious, it's fast. Even the R550 I would take. I mean, if I have to have the lowly 400 horsepower one, I'll live with that. I believe they're all-wheel drive too, actually, not rear-wheel drive. I can't remember. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to another MotorBiscuit video. This is the minivan tier list. Let us know in the comments what you think we got right, what we got wrong, where you would put any of these vans in the tier list. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at MotorBiscuit Official. Follow us on Twitter at Biscuit Motor. And for anything and everything automotive you could ever imagine, visit motorbiscuit.com. And we will see you in the next one.